Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Lieboff, and joining me for this, our upcoming Premier League, I think, Match Week 7 preview, is BJ Cunningham and Sam Ingram of Betting Expert. And gentlemen, I think this is a fun board to kind of dig into. A lot of good buy low spots, I would say, across the Premier League as we head into the international break next weekend. And we'll start with one of them. Crystal Palace is hosting Liverpool to start the weekend, 7:30 a.m. kickoff here in the States, lunchtime over there by you, Sam. Palace is plus 475 at home on the three-way line. Liverpool minus 190. The draw here is plus 360. You can almost hear Jurgen Klopp rolling over in wherever he is right now, complaining about the starting time for this one. Yep. Liverpool, of course, playing Champions League in the midweek, and then needing to go for the early
on
kickoff.
Wednesday of all days. They didn't
on Wednesday,
on Tuesday.
Right. And now they got to take on Palace at Selhurst Park in the early kickoff. The schedule spot is part of it, BJ, but I lean towards Palace here at the price. I think that the numbers tell us a different story about Palace. We all thought that this team would be a lot better than they've been. They are one of a handful of winless teams. I think we're down to 5 winless teams in the Premier League now. And I do think that's a little unfair there, but it's not like they've been that impressive, right? Their expected goal differentials suggest they should be around like 7 points. They're at 3 with 3 draws and 3 losses. The draws, though, you can say were kind of impressive. A few of them, at least, like they held Chelsea, who have been on the rise. A 0-0 against United is fine. I thought they were actually fine against Everton at Goodison Park. That game could have gone in any direction. Any result would have been fair there. So plus 475, I think, on a money line, or if you want to back the spread, which I'm sure you're going to pump out here, I feel like that's the way to go here.
Yeah, a lot of football for Liverpool now, because they had to, not only they're going to play the Champions League here in the midweek, but they had to play in the EFL Cup against West Ham. And if you look at the lineup they played in that match, it wasn't a completely fully rotated lineup. So it's really not that great of a spot here for Liverpool. And, I think it's pretty clear right now that if you're going to, frustrate Liverpool or give them some problems, you have to do what Nottingham Forest was able to do. And from what we've seen from Crystal Palace this season, especially when they've played better teams, is they're pretty good sitting in that compact 5-3-2. Like they can sit in it and they can deny space through the middle and they can make life difficult. You mentioned the expected goals, Michael. Well, it's really just been their offense so far. I mean, they've only scored 4 goals, but they've created 7.5. So, the offense is due for a little bit of positive regression. The one thing that worries me is yes, Nottingham Forest was able to frustrate Liverpool, but man, they are still a very, very difficult team to defend. Because they're able to transition or rotate their top 3 guys, whether it be Jota, Luis Diaz, and Salah. All those guys can drop into the half space. All of them can drop to even build up, which creates space and obviously can create more chances for Liverpool. But again, horrible spot here for Liverpool. We're going on 3 weeks now where they've been playing 2 to 3 matches a week. So I think the spot's pretty good here for Palace. I think Liverpool's a tad overvalued. I have Liverpool projected at minus 135. So I am showing a little bit of value on Palace. And I still do believe in this Palace team. Even though the results haven't been there, I think the results are coming. And they may get a result here against Liverpool.
Sam, you thinking looks a little skinny on Liverpool, right?
Yeah, it does. I really don't like this for Liverpool at minus 200 for all the reasons mentioned. Bologna on Wednesday night and then travelling to the capital Saturday lunchtime. It feels a bit criminal, really. I keep going on about it, but these players are just they're just flogged, treated like cattle. And toe to go again, and that is difficult. We don't really think of players like that. We think of them more as machines, like from a viewing standpoint, but they're really not. But yeah, so I don't really like this spot for Liverpool, and Crystal Palace don't really like playing Liverpool. Liverpool are unbeaten in their last 9 at Selhurst Park, winning 8. And Palace have actually conceded more Premier League goals against Liverpool than they have against any other opponent. So a bit of a bogey side, if you can call Liverpool that, because obviously they beat most teams, so I'm not sure if they fall into that category. But Palace have just travelled to Liverpool, of course, becoming the first side to fall short against Everton this season, which I absolutely love for Michael. Will that rock their confidence a little? Maybe. This is a Palace team, which you mentioned a minute ago, that are yet to find their feet this season after such an impressive ending to last campaign. I saw a quote actually from Glasner after the Everton game touching on their poor form. He said, there are two different ways you can deal with a situation. Blame the others, blame whoever, or start with yourself changing something and not bury your head in the sand. You roll your sleeves up and keep going, because mentality is great. Character is great. We have to find a way to get the momentum back, and we will try it next week against Liverpool, of course. And to be honest, that's got me going a little bit, let alone what his kind of rousing.
Are we sure he's Austrian? That sounded very, very Churchillian.
It really did.
The Blitz.
So they're going to be targeting this game. They're going to know Liverpool have had plenty of games in the legs, and at one, what are they minus?
They're around
Liverpool.
minus 200, like minus 190.
Minus 200 for a Liverpool win. Just won't be going anywhere near that. But equally, like BJ said, this Liverpool team are a really, really handy outfit, and they're showing that maybe they've got Premier League winning capabilities in that team with the depth of the squad and how Arne Slot's come in and just slotted in. So I'm probably going to pass on this one, as boring as it is to open the show, because I can easily see Liverpool turning up and getting their job done, business-like. They probably won't run out, comfortable winners, but I can see them getting it done. So pass for me.
Should have noted that Liverpool are top of the table right now. They're down to plus 450 to win the Premier League in 2024-2025.
Can I mention something about that really quick?
Yeah.
If you want to bet Liverpool, I would advise people to wait, because they have a very, very difficult schedule coming up after the international break from the Champions League and in the Premier League as well. And obviously they haven't really played the top tier teams yet, outside of obviously Manchester United. So I would caution people to maybe wait, because when Liverpool lost to Nottingham Forest, they dropped to 8-1 to win the Premier League. So if they go through a little bit of a difficult run through this bad period, you could probably get a better price on them if Arsenal and City obviously keep form.
And we'll talk about those two teams in the next two matches. City is now the second favorite to win the Premier League at plus 180. Arsenal, BJ are the favorites. They're plus 140, but it does look like these three teams are pretty clearly separating themselves from the pack. City hosts Fulham over this weekend coming up. They're minus 425 at home. Fulham plus 950. The draws plus 600. The Cottagers have been, you called Liverpool a handy outfit. Fulham has definitely ticked that box as well to start the year. They're coming off an impressive 1-0 over another handy outfit in Nottingham Forest. They're up to 6th place in the Premier League. Everything kind of checks out here too. They've got 8 goals scored, 5 against. The expected goals are not far off from that. 5 unbeaten on the bounce. The schedule has been a pretty good representation. They had that win against Newcastle United and Forest coming into this match, so they should be confident. It's just you kind of feel bad for Fulham going to City in this spot with the 2 back-to-back draws for City, knowing that they've got to get a result here to keep pace with the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal, who are both going to be big favorites to get 3 points over the weekend and go into the international break at the very worst, within 1 point of the top of the table, Sam. So it does feel like City might come out and just pace them here. It's just a tricky spot for Fulham to go and cause a ruckus. But in other situations, like I'd be a little more confident in Fulham perhaps outrunning these odds.
Spot on. I've been bigging Fulham up for a little while now, so it feels like the time to stand up and put my money where my mouth is. Away at City, big win on the road, like you said, against Forest last time out. They've been given a plus 1.75 Asian handicap, which would have easily won in all of their games today this season, but it's a big handicap. They've lost just once in the opener against United in Manchester, so they've tasted defeat already in that area this season. And honestly, I just hate opposing Man City in any capacity, especially at home, especially with two sides now potentially sniffing around this Premier League title. A lot has been written and spoken about following that Arsenal game. The Newcastle matchup always looked a bit awkward following that. Pep will have gone over all of this since. It'll be very much them versus the rest of the world in that dressing room, and I just hate the thought of that in terms of backing against them. They played Champions League yesterday, Bratislava 4-0, ran away with it. Wouldn't have taken too much out of the tank. 76% possession, 28 shots to 3. No shots on target conceded. So that screams like a glorified friendly / training match, really. For me, it always boils down to whether I'd feel more comfortable on City minus 1.75 or Fulham plus 1.75. That's something I always like build into my thought process when taking an Asia handicap line. And I have to say, I think it would be the latter. I think it would be on Fulham, but still, I'm going to swerve it because I am a coward. But if you want Fulham onside somehow, then Raul Jimenez to take 2 or more shots in the game is plus 137. That could be a way into this one. He's hit 2 or more shots in both of his last games. And we mentioned last week on the show, maybe he's looking like he's getting back to the Jimenez of old, the Wolves Jimenez. But yeah, I suppose we'll see on that front. I just hate backing against City. And like you said, 2 draws, Arsenal and Newcastle. Are they really going to drop points again? Or is it, are they really not going to run away with this? The jury's out. I'd expect them to win comfortably.
Great litmus test here for Fulham because... like you said, Sam, for Fulham has been incredibly impressive. And I think what's been most impressive, I saw a stat, essentially they have turned the ball over the fewest of anybody in their own final third to overall for the entire season, which is a very impressive stat. That obviously means they're maybe playing a little bit more direct, but also when they do decide to build out of the back, that they're actually somewhat successful. And we know that City's press has been a lot better this season, but, yes, they beat Newcastle at home, but other than that, they've played, United, Leicester, Ipswich, West Ham, and Forest, right? So this is time to take on one of the big boys. I will say last year at the Etihad, they held City to 7 shots, which was kind of interesting. They were very good sitting in their compact defensive block, and I think that obviously there's no Paulinho there anymore, but you could make a case maybe for the under here. But of course, that's always a scary thought with that big number 9 guy in the center for City.
That it is. So love for Fulham, but it's just not the situation to get riled up here. They're 14-1 to finish top 6 right now, so still like an outsider. There is just like this cohort of teams, Fulham, Bournemouth, and Forest, who I think are all 3 of them are still sides you want to be have in your pocket for situations when they're not playing Man City in what is essentially a must-win game for them. One team that does not fit that bill is Southampton. They are traveling to Arsenal, take on BJ's Gunners. The Gunners are the biggest favorite on the board this weekend, minus 750 on the 3-way line. Southampton traveling at 17-1. The draw is plus 850. We bring this point up a lot that these prices, like a 17-1 looks long, but considering some of the prices that used to be dealt out on the 3-way market a couple of years ago, you'd get a team like Southampton closer to like 28-1 in this situation. So it's really not that interesting of a game for me here. BJ, Sam used the term business-like to describe what he could see Liverpool doing in Palace. I look at this the same for Arsenal. It's like the international breaks on the other side of this weekend. This looks like a spot where you can do what you need to do and then get out of Dodge and just hold serve against a team that shouldn't give you much trouble. But then again, we would say that about Leicester last weekend, and there were some nervy moments for Arsenal in that one.
There was, but Arsenal's offense is back, Michael. It's back.
Yep.
I'm not going to step on what Sam's going to say because I love his bet that he's about to give. But really, just the only handicap you need for this match is set pieces. But Arsenal's the best. Southampton's the worst. So set piece FC is probably going to score a couple goals off of them. And everybody's going to get mad and say that, they can't create anything from open play. They can only do set pieces. Well, if you're the most elite set piece team ever and nobody can stop you, what does it matter, right? So, yeah, this should be – Sam, I don't know if you have markets available to bet this in the UK. We don't have it available in the United States. But if they offered a bet Arsenal to score a goal, like method of goal off of a set piece, what do we think that line would be? Like -150, -170? Where would we set that line, you think? So, so for me, I mean, I think, all the main markets it's about right. I have no interest in taking an Arsenal under here. I know that, Leicester did nothing and PSG did nothing against them, but with how bad Southampton is at defending set pieces, Arsenal literally could score 5 off of them.
I'll try and find a price for that whilst we're on the podcast, because I'm pretty sure there is a market over
There
here.
is.
I think so. There definitely is in play on Bet365, but I'm not sure about pre-game. I can't remember, but I'll have a look. Just carrying on that theme, really, my bet is going to be Gabriel, anytime scorer, plus 550. Just quickly looking back at the Monday night football, I thought Saints started really brightly for 10 minutes against Bournemouth on the weekend, but that was all we got from them. They didn't treble Bournemouth after that, and they looked really vulnerable whenever there were multiple bodies in the defensive third in transitions. There was an evident gulf in quality for me between the two sides. That was clear. 9 of Southampton's starting 11 were new signings, so they're going to need to gel. They're going to need time to bed in. Time they've not really got, because now we're straight into Arsenal at the Emirates, and regardless of bedding in, adapting, I'm not sure this current crop is of the level to compete and profit in the Premier League. Like, I just don't see it. BJ said last week that he has Ipswich down as the worst team in the division this season. Well, like, Southampton cannot be far off. They cannot be far off. Like, I wonder how many players Kieran McKenna would pinch in Southampton starting 11 and slot straight into theirs. Like, I think you can make a case for Aaron Ramsdale and go. I can see that. And Tyler Diblin, young lad, he looks like a really good prospect, but he's at the stage of his career where he's not a guaranteed starter. I think maybe just Ramsdale, and that is, I think that says a lot. Anyway, I cannot see anything other than an Arsenal victory here. They're minus 883 to win the game, so I'm not really, breaking the mold when I say that. I'm not keen on the Asian handicap. When you start digging into the underlying numbers and you hone in on Southampton's set piece data in the Premier League this season, you'll see that they unwantedly lead the way in set piece XGA with 3.82 expected goals against from St. Pieces in just 6 games. So this is an Arsenal side that we know are very good at set pieces, very good at corners, getting the ball into the box from wide free kicks. They've scored 3 goals from set pieces in 6 games so far, and it could have been more. They also led the way in goals scored from set pieces last season as well. So looking at Gabriel to score anytime at plus 550, that looks really appealing. Like, you just have to go back to the Man City game, which is kind of fresh in my mind. He probably should have had a brace there from exactly the same corner routine. They tried man-to-man marking with Doku at first, I think it was, which is ridiculous. And then they put Kyle Walker on Haaland, on Gabriel, sorry, and neither worked. And Gabriel kind of just skipped through and was very close to scoring on 2 occasions, scored on 1. Plus 550 looks like it'll be my main play here, and Gabriel first and last goal scorer at 18-1. I'll probably have a few pennies on both of them too.
Perfect. That brings us to West Ham and Ipswich. So the 2 worst teams, in the Premier League per you guys, duking it out. One ticket on West Ham, though. And West Ham's minus 125. BJ, they're hosting Ipswich, plus 320. The draw is plus 300. I think it comes down to just if you trust this West Ham defense enough to be competent. And I guess they were that against Brentford over the weekend. So you do think that this could be a buy low spot on the Hammers?
Potentially. I mean, here's the thing. I think these are 2 of the teams that are just really horrible at pressing, right? So West Ham's troubles this season have been when they've tried to build out of the back, and they've just consistently turned the ball over and gave teams those easy opportunities. If there was ever a team, I said this when Southampton played Ipswich. I was like, if there was ever a team that if Southampton's buildup would look good against, it would be Ipswich. And lo and behold, they created 2.4 expected goals and were really unlucky not to win the match. West Ham actually has been a little bit better than you would think in terms of playing through pressure. They're 7th in dangerous possession lost in their own final third. That's 7th best, excuse me. While Ipswich is allowing the highest build-up completion percentage of anybody in the Premier League. So the thing for me is if West Ham is actually able to build up and their high block is actually able to limit this Ipswich team that has been horrible offensively, and they're at home, minus 125 might be a cheap price on them here. I think I have West Ham projected north of minus 160. I'm just trying to find the courage to be able to bet it. I haven't found the courage currently, but maybe I'll get there by the time we reach Friday or maybe even Saturday. But yeah, I think this is a decent buy low spot on West Ham. I know they haven't been that good this season, but listen, they've played a pretty difficult schedule. A lot of their, other matches against mid-table teams have been on the road. This is the first one at home where they're, big favorites. So good buy low spot in West Ham. But as you can hear from that sigh, I'm not too thrilled to maybe.
Well, do it. Sam kind of can take what you said and find a way in here, because I think it kind of plays to both the kind of you speaking out of both sides of your mouth a little bit. It's like, yeah, this defense is a bit of a mess, but they should win. So Sam, your bet makes some sense here.
Yeah, more of a lean than anything. Like BJ said, I'm not really in a position to trust either team at present, especially West Ham. And I've been banging the drum a little bit about goals in Ipswich games, so pretty happy to see 2-2 on the weekend. And at West Ham, will they get on the score sheet again? Maybe, but only Leicester have had fewer shots than Ipswich Town in the Premier League this season. And Ipswich has accumulated the lowest XG in open play of any team with 2.9 XG from 6 games. So that's not ideal when looking at my selection, which is West Ham to win and both teams to score at plus 244. So I'm pretty confident West Ham at home, they have the tools to bypass that Ipswich midfield and then cause some real problems. I'm just hesitant to really back West Ham right now because I'm just so miffed around like their defending and their approach to games. It just really does need to be better at this level. Don't love West Ham at minus 120, but West Ham on both teams to score plus 244. It's a little bit more palatable, bigger price, probably with a smaller stake if I had to. I just don't feel like I can trust West Ham right now. But I would expect a couple goals in this. So yeah, West Ham to win, both teams to score. More of a lean.
Okay, let's stay in London and look at Brentford and Wolves next. Brentford plus 105 at home. Wolves traveling plus 255. The draw is plus 265 here. Brentford, a little disappointing over the weekend against West Ham. I think we all were expecting better from them. Wolves, been disappointing all season, though I think last week was perhaps their most encouraging sign of the season in the 2-1 loss to Liverpool. Still without a win, minus 10 goal difference, but their expected goal suggests that should be around minus 4. So some positive regression coming for this team, you'd think. BJ, that's kind of scares me off. I don't want to bet against either one of these sides in this particular matchup.
Here's the thing. I am showing a little value on Brentford, and I kind of dug into those type of numbers, and a lot of it is just prior year data, right? Like utilizing what these teams have done in prior years, and obviously early on in the season, I tend to lean pretty heavily on what teams did the prior year versus what they've done in only, 6 matches to begin here. So I am showing a little bit of value on Brentford, have them closer to minus 120, but I think there are some really concerning signs for them, especially defensively right now. They're dead last in expected goals allowed. And I get it. They've conceded over 2 expected goals to Liverpool, to City, to Tottenham. They conceded, about 1 expected goal to West Ham over the weekend. But I mean, if you want to bet Brentford, just bet them to score first, I guess, is the way to play them, right? 3 goals inside the first minute in 3 straight matches. That's a Premier League record. But yeah, the other concerning sign is, and I kind of said this coming into the season, is that, without Aaron Hickey and without Rico Henry, they were limited in terms of what they could do with their fullbacks, right? So you've seen them start Keane Lewis-Potter at left back, at left wing back, essentially, like he's naturally a left winger. So they're playing a lot of guys out of position. And the concerning sign here for me as well is, obviously Brentford is always so good on set pieces. Well, Wolves consistently under Gary O'Neill has been one of the best set piece defenses. And Matthias Janssen is out for Brentford, who is the set piece taker for them. So, and if you watch Fabio Carvajal this weekend, there were some pretty poor set pieces that he delivered in there for Brentford against West Ham. So I'm passing. I'm sure the Bees will win this match after I decide that maybe I'm done with them. But we have our spot for the Bees coming up after the international break, Michael, and it's at Old Trafford. So that'll be the spot to bet the Bees.
Waiting with bated breath there. Sam, you're looking looks like you feel the same way here.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to look past the Brentford win at -105 given Wolves' start. I think most people will head towards that straight away. Wolves have picked up 1 point in 6 games against Forest at the City Ground, but if you look at their schedule, you cannot really blame them. Their schedule has been horrendous, so tough. And I just hope there's level heads at Molineux and Gary O'Neill's job is safe for the foreseeable, because that start to the season is ridiculous. I'm really intrigued to see how they do here actually against Brentford on the weekend. It's not an easy place to go, but it's an easier task than what they faced so far. So this is an intriguing one for me. After the international break, they host Man City and then travel to Brighton, which is ridiculous. But after that, I think that's where we're really going to find out where Wolves' level is. Palace, Southampton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich and Leicester. That leads them right up to Christmas Day. So that's a stretch which is kind, but that's no wonder because they've played all of the top teams already in the opening 6 games. From a betting perspective, I think it's probably worth waiting for Wolves to play Brentford, City and Brighton, and then just have a look to see what the price they are to avoid relegation, knowing full well that their scheduling does a 180 and flips on its head. Wolves are 1.36. Don't know what that is in your fractions to avoid the drop at present. That may well change after another 3 losses. So keep an eye on that. But here on the weekend, although probably an easier task than they faced so far, that the poor form and tough run they've been on might affect Wolves somewhat, especially when Brentford get a goal, which I expect them to at home. So Brentford -105 is what I'll put forward, but it's quite tentative and it's more of a lean. There are definitely more enticing bets in the Premier League this weekend.
And one of them, I think, is Bournemouth on the road against Leicester. They're +115. The cherries are Leicester +225. The draw is +260. I think Leicester probably has played the most mental games of any team so far in the Premier League. I feel like every weekend I go into thinking, this should be ho-hum, favorite that the Tottenham will beat Leicester or Arsenal will just crush Leicester or whatever. Even like the Palace match, the Palace will probably just take care of business, and it just ends up getting flipped on its head. Even that Villa match was interesting. Still haven't got a win, but they do have 3 draws. One against Spurs, one against Palace, and one against Everton. The one on Palace on the road. Shipped 6 expected goals to Arsenal over the weekend and lost 4-2. It was 2-2 going into the late stages of that one.
Arsenal's not good offensively, though. Remember that.
Yeah,
point,
exactly.
When people tell you that they're not good.
I will do that.
Yeah.
Bournemouth, meanwhile, I feel like what they've done this season has just made sense, right? Like, took care of Southampton and Everton in wins. I mean, the Everton win, of course, was crazy, but you get the point, right? They're beating the teams they're supposed to beat. They've got a couple draws against teams that make sense now that we know a little bit about them in Forest and Newcastle, and then the losses, a tight one to Chelsea, and then they just were overwhelmed a little bit against Liverpool at Anfield. So everything about this Bournemouth team, I think, just makes sense. They're going in the direction we thought they were. They're kind of on the straight and narrow, and I think that's enough to be confident to bet them at plus money, Sam, on the road at Leicester.
I think you're right. Yeah, I just want to make an announcement, really. I've actually retired from win to nil betting. I was on Arsenal win
no.
2-0, and the state of Leicester's
Oh
goals.
no. Well, they should have won it, Sam. I mean, Arsenal.
Honestly,
I mean, come on.
I've I mentioned it on the Ben Expert pod this morning. I'm actually out. I've retired from win 2-0. No more from me. I'm done with it. The betting gods do not look down favorably on me in that market for some reason.
Well, you can join me on both teams to score no. It's my favorite bet in this entire game.
LaLiga only.
LaLiga only.
So Bournemouth grew into the game against Southampton Monday night after 10 or so minutes of pressure. Evanilson got his first goal for the club. Really, really good finish. Ball's come over his shoulder and he's volleyed at home. It's a big money signing for Bournemouth, so it's important. He's off the mark and quickly, and I think he'll prove to be a really good addition at the top end of the pitch. But Antoine Semenyo, I thought he was brilliant. Really, really good. Used both feet, got a really good strike on him, powerful, strong, unpredictable. These kind of players are going to really trouble Leicester, I'm pretty sure, especially when they're in position and they're hounding them to make a mistake. So, yeah, Leicester at Arsenal, scuppering my Arsenal win 2-0 bets. Fair play to them. They show character, guts to take the game to Arsenal after half time. And that's no mean feat at the Emirates. But there was a big, big gulf there. And all that XG later, Arsenal took all 3 points. And that actually now makes Leicester the poorest side defensively in the league. I think you mentioned Brentford might be above them from the XG. I'm going off. They're at 12.75 XGA in 6 games, which is really, really not good. And against the Cherries, yeah, another tough game. I like Bournemouth in this spot. They showed against Southampton that there was also a golfing class there, and I've got Southampton, Leicester, and Ipswich rated quite evenly. So if Bournemouth can do that to Southampton, although it was probably a perfect fit stylistically in that matchup against a possession-focused Russell Martin side, I'm having them to cause Leicester some real problems here. Bournemouth are suffocating. You have to be right at it against them. Concentration levels need to be sky high because their game plan is to pounce on any little mistake, to force opponents down alleys and into space where they can pick pockets. And I feel like they'll profit again from another newly promoted side. There is life in this Leicester side. You've seen that at the Emirates, that they're not going to roll over. I think they've got a goal in them. They've got a bit of fight in them. Any Steve Cooper side will do. So if you want to get Bournemouth on the side and you would like the security of the draw as well, then the minus 0.25 Bournemouth Asian handicap at minus 115, I think that's probably the standout bet for me of the weekend.
Yeah, I agree. So the thing with Leicester is right now, I mean, their offense is, like you mentioned, Sam, they're terrible. They're taking, this is not a good stat or a position to be in. They are taking the fewest shots of anybody in the Premier League, and they are conceding the most shots. You generally can't win doing that. But the biggest thing for me here is Leicester under Steve Cooper have been trying to build out of the back a little bit more. They were trying to maintain what they did in the Championship under Maresca. And boy, it has gone very, very badly. They are second to last in the Premier League in possession lost in their own final third in dangerous areas. Well, Bournemouth's number 1. They're the best pressing team in the Premier League. So it kind of echoing what I said about Southampton against Bournemouth, where I was just like, this is about as good of a matchup as you can ask for. Same thing applies here if Leicester's going to continue to do that. The other aspect with Leicester defensively, I mean, they've conceded the second most expected goals. And when I evaluate teams that tend to play a little bit more passive and play deeper and play more compact structures, I want to know how good are they at keeping teams out of the penalty area. Well, Leicester's not doing a good job of that because they're 17th in final third of box entry conversion rate allowed. So I know this looks like a buy high spot on Bournemouth, right, after a big win against Southampton and after Leicester concedes 700 expected goals to Arsenal, but I think that Bournemouth is still a little bit undervalued here. I have them projected at minus 120, and it's kind of one of those things that, you know, all three of us came into the season and was like, this Bournemouth team is undervalued not only in the futures market, but pretty much on a week in and week out basis, given, you know, specific opponents. So I think this is a situation where, you know, you saw the market kind of move a little bit towards Bournemouth. They were at, you know, plus 120 going into the match on Monday, and now we're down to plus 110. That's not a very big movement, and I don't think it's moved far enough. So I'm with you guys. I like Bournemouth plus 110 here.
All right. All three of us on Bournemouth. don't think we're going to get that kind of unanimous momentum behind Everton, who are on a one-match winning streak and are home to Newcastle.
They are the relegation zone.
They're out of the relegation zone. They've got the top of the table in their sights, and they are plus 225 against Newcastle. The Magpies at plus 110. The draw is plus 265 here. I mean, it sounds crazy to say, but the win was coming for Everton, and we shouldn't be too surprised, but it was surprising nonetheless that they held on, showed some guile coming back as well. Now, a trickier opponent in Newcastle, but one that has been in a little bit of disarray to start the season, and I'm starting to get a little frustrated because I do think that this Newcastle team still has it in them to just go on a run and surge up the table, but they just haven't really. The results aren't showing it. The underlying metrics are pretty concerning here. So it does feel like, famous last words, Everton or nothing. Once again,
as it is every
BJ.
week, Michael.
Yep. I was looking to see what the number on Anthony Gordon to score.
Oh yeah,
was it's way too short. I mean, he's only 13-1 to score 2. So
okay. Well, he's probably going to start up top for them in this match, which is, I'll be honest, a little concerning if I'm Newcastle, given the physicality that Everton has. So, yeah, that's the big story here, right? Ishak is as currently doubtful, and even if he does play, I don't think he's going to be at 100%. And the way to beat Everton right now is simply just crosses. Crystal Palace scored off a cross against them in the previous match. Bournemouth created all their chances off of crosses. Everton's allowing the most crosses of anybody in the Premier League into their penalty area. Now, with Branthwaite back, I think that's obviously going to improve. They'll get better at winning those aerial duels. But again, with Callum Wilson injured, and if Ishak's not going to play, I mean, what type of aerial threat does Newcastle have to actually threaten Everton's defense? And the one encouraging sign from Everton is their high block in terms of how they're generating turnovers and forcing them is actually still very, very good. They're top 5 in forcing opponents to turn the ball over in dangerous areas. Obviously, we've been through the expected goals numbers time and time again, but with Newcastle, something interesting is kind of happening with Eddie Howe. Like they're not playing like super direct all the time. They actually are trying to build out of the back more. They're trying, similar in the same vein as like Brentford is trying to. They're trying to be a team that can control matches more because, in a match like this where you don't have Ishak available and you're just going to play transition back and forth with Everton, I'm not sure that's really going to favor you, right? The one thing that positive sign for Newcastle is they're very good at defending set pieces. So, Everton won't really have a big advantage there. But without Ishak available, I don't think Newcastle should be laying this price at all. If you remember last year, Michael, Everton hammered Newcastle at Goodison Park. So I think this is a good spot for Everton. Obviously, they play way better at home than they do on the road. Last season, +6 expected goal differential at Goodison Park. So great spot here for Everton. I'll be on them plus half a goal at -145. I'd be really surprised, Michael, if that price, if we don't get closer to a pick 'em by match time here, if Ishak is not available. So if you're listening to this, I would probably grab Everton now. Famous last words. But yeah, I just don't
you always want to rush to the window to bet this team.
Yeah, I know. I don't see a scenario how Newcastle's going to get any higher than +115.
Yeah, so the Everton result is actually like the first result I look for in the Premier League right now because of this podcast, which is just the weirdest thing ever.
Welcome.
But yeah, thrilled that they've got their first win over the line. Was it deserved over the course of 90 minutes? I'm not sure. Maybe not. The numbers suggest Palace were probably unlucky on the whole, but Everton edged in front, kept the lead. That's something they've not been able to do of late, and they've maybe not had the rub of the green this season, but they've managed to get on the score sheet multiple times and haven't been able to see games out a few times. And obviously that's the most important part. Everton have been playing well, but just simply not getting results over the line. So I'm hopeful they can continue their form because they have been pretty good. Newcastle on Saturday, you can get Everton plus 0.5 Asian handicap at -139. I don't hate that. It's a bit short. It's more of a lean for me. I'm not as bullish as these lads are, but the draw is a big runner for me. So to get that onside with a full payout is a nice angle to approach. Jared Branthwaite is back, and next to Tarkowski, that gives Everton a really solid foundation to build from. That's something they've been craving. Newcastle on the weekend against City, up their game at home against one of the big boys. That's usually what they do at St. James's Park, so I'm not surprised about that. But away from home against Everton, potentially without Isak, probably without Isak and Wilson, it's not ideal. Gordon fielding well last weekend, but it's not, I don't know, I'm not thrilled with that. I wouldn't be if I was a Newcastle fan compared to what Isak brings to the squad, to this Newcastle side. And so that and the doubts surrounding their start to the season form-wise, I think it makes Everton a live underdog here. And I've got a stat with you, which I'll leave with you. Everton have won 6 of their last 8 Premier League matches at Goodison Park, losing the other 2. Since the first game in this run on April the 6th, the Toffees have won more home points than any other Premier League side with 18 points. So if that doesn't make you want to rush to the counter, then I don't know what will.
Oh, yeah. Join us. Feel the pain, baby. Feel the pain. Okay. Yeah, we do joke, but it does look like they're the right side, and when you consider the prices. I think the right side of the next match is Nottingham Forest. They're 5-1 on the 3-way line against Chelsea. Going against Chelsea again, it's not been going well doing that. Cole Palmer has had a lot to say about betting against Chelsea. The Blues are now minus 220. The draw is plus 380. But I just want to keep betting this Forest side when they get to prices like this until it goes pear-shaped or they get adjusted down. I think their style of play will always provide them a pretty high floor. Under Nuno, defensively adept. And if I'm not mistaken, even under Steve Cooper, like this was a team that was pretty difficult to break down, more so at home than on the road. So it seems like it's in their DNA since they've come up to the Premier League. So keeping Chelsea under wraps has proven difficult, but I think Forest is worth a shot here, Sam, to do it even on the road.
I completely agree. Chelsea at the weekend, you look at the scoreline, you look at that first half, and you think, oh, this is, this Chelsea team scintillating. Like, they are looking really, really good. Previous week played West Ham, whose defence were non-existent, carved through them like they weren't even there. And then played Brighton at Stamford Bridge on the weekend just gone. And this Brighton side, their high line was just, it was suicidal, really. Chelsea played it perfectly. You can tell that's what they were working on all week. Whenever a Chelsea midfielder had a yard of space and the ability to turn and face the Brighton goal, that was the trigger for the Chelsea front line to just get on their skates and just await a through ball over the top, whether it be kind of a through ball through the centre backs or a dink over the top. And they could have been out of sight by 7 or 8 goals in the first half. They really could. I think you had did Palmer hit the post? You had Madueke dragged one wide, and it was, like I said, it was suicidal. Chelsea are decent. They are better than most people perceive they would be during the summer, but the bookies have them down as the next best thing. They've got them at what price are they? Well, they've got them really short this weekend.
Minus 220.
Minus 220 to beat Forest at home, and I'm just not having that. The bookies are fully having Chelsea, and I just don't know if I'm there yet from a betting perspective. So it's a good thing, really, because it opens up a bit of value for me on the weekend. Forest Asian handicap plus 1.25. You can get that at minus 115, and I think that looks pretty good. Chelsea are not going to get the type of defensive structure that West Ham offered. Chelsea are not going to come up against the high line that Brighton offered. They're just not going to get that against this Forest team. This handicap, like Fulham's in Man City the weekend coming, hasn't lost once. It's won 6 in 6. Morgan Gibbs-White is back from suspension this weekend as well. He missed the Fulham loss. So that's massive for them. Gibbs-White has missed 8 games for Forest since promotion, and Forest have lost 6 of those 8 fixtures. So him being in the squad is very important. And just looking at the prices on the whole, I just think Forest is massively undervalued here, and that's a result of Chelsea being overvalued. And I think that is born from their opponents in their last 2 games. So yeah, Forest on the handicap for me.
Yeah, I agree. Sam hit the nail on the head. The last 2 matches, they played 2 of the, best possible matchups for Chelsea specifically. And now they're going to face a Nottingham Forest team that just doesn't allow you to do really anything. There's no real concern to take away from what Nottingham Forest did over the weekend against Fulham as it applies to this match, going forward, as it applies to maybe other matches when they're, sitting at plus 110 or even money as favorite at home. Maybe it's a little more concerning. But outside of the penalty, Fulham did not even attempt a shot with an XG rating over 0.1. Like, they allowed them to do absolutely nothing. So we're now in a situation where that Nottingham Forest is top 5 in expected goals allowed. They're second and final third of box entry conversion rate allowed, which tells me that they're closing off the middle of the pitch and just not allowing you to play through there. So that means that you're going to be in a situation where, if you remember last season when Chelsea was kind of struggling, it was because teams were just letting them try to cross the ball into the box. And they just didn't have very many aerial threats to be able to get on the end of those. And that's why they struggled offensively. The same can apply here. Nottingham Forest has allowed the second fewest crosses into their penalty area. So I think this is a great spot for Nottingham Forest. If you remember last year, Nottingham Forest beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. If you look at the final numbers, they did a very good job defending them, and they hit them in transition a couple times. Chelsea's press really hasn't been as effective as we would imagine with how aggressive they're playing under Maresca. 10th in passes per defensive action, 14th in forcing opponents to turn the ball over in dangerous areas. So great spot here for Nottingham Forest. Love them. I'm with Sam. I'm with Michael. I love them plus 110.
Aston Villa, Manchester United next. I think just on merit when you look at the 2 teams playing, this probably is the headliner for the weekend, but there really is no clear one. Villa's plus 125 at Villa Park. United traveling plus 190. The draw is plus 270. Eric Ten Hag came out this weekend, and I think he quasi guaranteed that United would win another trophy, because I think the quote was like,
that'll keep his job though. They could finish in 11th place, but if he wins the Europa League, man, or the League Cup,
they are a weird team. This United side, they went into that Tottenham game with an even goal differential, 5 goals scored, 5 against. And obviously, they lost 3-0, so it's now sitting at -3. But the offensive numbers need to improve, right? Like the underlying metrics show it. Like, this team should be scoring more goals than they have. But then again, like the funkiness of this United side, and not just this season, but over the course of the last handful of years, kind of makes me think, maybe they just won't, because this is just a weird team. And they're heavily flawed. And I think that this Villa attack could pick them apart here. And we could look at another score line that's not too dissimilar to what we saw from this weekend, especially with Villa knowing like they've got to shape themselves up in the back. Like, they've got to be better. And you'd assume that they'd improve a little bit after shipping 2 goals to Ipswich and blowing that opportunity to get 3 easy points. I think the price at home on Villa is fine at plus 125. BJ, I just don't think I'd go much further than that.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because we are recording this before Aston Villa plays Bayern Munich, which I think is going to be a very important litmus test for Aston Villa, because they haven't really played anybody difficult to begin the season. Arsenal's been their most difficult match. They were pretty good in that match, but that was also the second match of the season. I think that Aston Villa, the price maybe could get a little bit better here at home. They've obviously been really good at home. Like, their struggles last season came away from home. They had a -9 expected goal differential away from home, plus 12 at home. And if you remember when they played United, I think it was the first or second match, I can't remember, but they went up 2-0 and they just kept playing their high line. Like, they could have just sat back and played a low defensive line. United would have not even sniffed them. But United just kept playing off of their back line, and they ended up scoring 3 goals. So that kind of goes along lines with 2 of the bets that I'm making here. I like over 3 at plus 105. I think United's defensive structure right now is still horrible. If you don't believe me, just go watch the first goal that Tottenham scored against them before the red card even happened. I mean, even before the red card happened, Tottenham had already taken 12 shots against United. Like, this is still a very, very bad team. Ugarte is the guy who didn't track Van de Ven on that big run, which allowed him to go and just cross the ball for an easy goal. So he's not going to save their midfield. Their press still isn't that effective. So how are they going to effectively press Aston Villa's build up and really cause them any sorts of problems? You know, the worrying thing here for me, and I like the price on Aston Villa, but I protected myself with over 3 goals as well, is if, you know, the match that keeps coming back to my head is when United played Brighton, and Brighton played that very high defensive line, and United was able to actually get in behind it and create a lot of chances. So that is the only thing that concerns me here for Aston Villa, but they are at home. It's a cheap price. They do have an extra day rest. United has to travel to Portugal to play Porto on Thursday. I did see a quote from Eric Ten Hag basically just saying, hey, trust the process. Like, we have to trust the process. The process has stunk for a year and a half. So maybe we don't trust the process, and maybe we change things up. And I'm also going to call one more thing. I think, you know, they say that they're not going to fire him. If this bad run continues and they eventually do sack him, the reason they hired Ruud van Nistelrooy to be their assistant was to eventually take over for Ten Hag. That's what I'm going to call it's going to happen. So they can float Gareth Southgate. They can float. I saw they float Allegri out there, which I think would actually be a terrific signing for them because they need some type of defensive structure. So, yeah, good price here on Aston Villa. I have them projected -110, and I also like over 3 goals at +105.
If United lose to Porto and then to Villa, do you reckon he'll get sacked?
They said this week that there are no conversations about sacking him. So I don't know what's going on, honestly.
I would say yes, but this is not following like the normal path of these kind of situations.
He should have already been gone a long time ago. And he
should have been gone ages ago.
And he's still somehow here.
Big Sam's still out there. David Moyes can come back.
I would love to see Allegri though. If they bring in Allegri, I think that would be amazing.
I think you're right though. With Van Nistelrooy, it feels like he would step in interim charge and then he would just completely switch things up. They start playing attacking football, the fans would buy in, and then it's just a ready-made replacement. So I do get that as well. Mm-hmm. Looking at this game on the weekend, I've actually gone against BJ, which I've learned over the past few months.
Very successful.
Probably not. It's very. No, I was going to say isn't too wise, but I've got under 3.0 goal line down. And I know it's a little bit scary because I watched United versus Tottenham at the weekend, which was just outrageous. But my thinking here is that both teams are in Europe. Villa got a seismic Champions League tie. These nights are what they've been craving for years and years against one of the European superpowers in Bayern Munich. This is the match for them. This is what they've been waiting for and craving. So in terms of their energy stores and concentration levels, I just wonder how much this match tonight is going to zap from them. United away in Porto, they're not the Porto of yesteryear, but you know exactly what that match is going to be like. It's going to be very scrappy. It's going to be a few yellow cards, I'd probably guess. So that's going to take a bit from United too. And I've deliberated about this a lot. And I think most importantly, after the weekend, with his job very much on the line again, Ten Hag will want to avoid defeat here first and foremost. I think he's going to set up to contain Villa for large spells if they can, especially in the opening stages. But the more I think about it, like the more the Tottenham game last week just rings around my mind, and then I start veering over to the Villa to win price. But I'm just not so sure with those European commitments. If both teams had a straight run to the weekend and the prices were what they are now, I'd just be jumping on Villa straight win. But I'm just not so sure. I'm kind of on the fence. So under free agent goes at -105. That's where I ended up. Are we going to see 4 goes after, midweek? Maybe. But that's where I've ended up.
You do see goals in the next one, though, Sam. Brighton and Spurs. That makes sense. I think Brighton plus 185 here at home. Spurs plus 120. The draw is plus 295. Numbers are a little bit skewed because of the walloping they put on United. But Tottenham's underlying metrics now just look really good, right? They're second in terms of expected goal difference per 90 in the Premier League. Their plus 7 goal difference is not too far off of their expected goal difference. We talked about it before their United game. Like, these are the two kind of trickiest teams to handicap, and they were playing one another. We all stayed away. I think if you had made us pick a side to bet to win that match, we would have all went with Tottenham. At least that's what I was thinking, and left myself kicking myself for not doing it. But they've now got 2 wins on the spin after 2 losses on the spin. 6 goals scored across those two wins, Sam. And you're expecting Tottenham to be able to do their share of the heavy lifting here against Brighton's defense.
At risk of repeating myself, but that Brighton high line was just so easy to play against last weekend. They made Chelsea look like prime Brazil. Could have been 8-0 at half-time, genuinely 8-0. So what do we think Tottenham is going to do on the weekend? Exactly the same. If Brighton arrive and put in a similar performance and approach the game similarly, the bookmakers agree. There is 2 over 3.5 goal lines this weekend in the Premier League. One is Arsenal versus Southampton. Bookies expecting a batter in there. And the other, that comes in Brighton versus Tottenham. And I cannot see anything other than goals here. I can't see how this thing doesn't rumble into a back and forth type of encounter. Brighton versus Chelsea ended as 4.16 XG to Chelsea versus 1.11 XG to Brighton. So if Spurs can get anywhere near that kind of output and Brighton can improve in the final third, now they're back at the Amex, I think 4 goals is likely for me. I don't usually take this high of a goal line, but if I was to pick 2 teams in the Premier League right now for an over 3.5 goals pick, I think it would be this 2, I think. So, yeah, you mentioned it, underlying numbers. Tottenham leads the way in the Premier League, 13.69 XG from 6 matches is what I've got in front of me. Brighton are good for a goal at home, of course, so I'm going to take the goal line, although it is big, over 3.5 goals at minus 101.
Yeah, it's Brighton's numbers are fascinating right now, because if you look at, all of these underlying metrics, because they've faced, teams like Ipswich and have dominated them, and they obviously dominated Everton in the first match. They're actually allowing, you can criticize the Herzler high line all you want, but they've allowed the fewest final third entries, the 5th fewest box entries, and in fact, they're allowing the lowest build-up completion percentage of anybody. The problem is they're 19th in final third to box entry conversion rate, which tells me when you beat the high line, you're basically just walking into their penalty area, right? So that is the concern. You obviously look at Brighton's schedule. They, had they were up a man against Arsenal for 45 minutes. They've been playing some of the bottom tier teams, and then you watch, what Chelsea did. It's hard, like Sam said, it's hard to not think that Tottenham can do the exact same thing. So, Solanke is obviously somebody that when he was at Bournemouth is very, very skilled at making those runs off the back line. And I saw a tweet that I thought was kind of funny. It was just like the average positions of both of these teams are just going to be right around the center circle when the game is done. So it's going to be a fun match. It will definitely be a lot of fun. I'm passing on it. Like, I have 3.5 goals projected for this one, but again, that's also taking into a lot of how low event matches were under De Zerbi towards the end of last season. So I definitely make a case for the over here. And if you want to have some fun, take the over. I mean, this is going to be the most fun match.
Yeah, definitely.
And a good way to get us back to you, BJ, to take a little adventure across Europe. We are recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so there are some Champions League matches that still have to play out, but nonetheless, take us through.
Yeah, let's go. Germany, Freiburg, draw no bet, minus 110 against Werder Bremen over the weekend. Freiburg has been very unlucky defensively so far to concede 7 goals off of 4.5 expected. Werder Bremen's offense has been completely non-existent to begin the season, so I think this is a pretty decent spot if you're going as a straight pick 'em. It's I have a little bit of value projected on Freiburg, have them closer to plus 135, so I like them. Next up, Venezia plus 0.5 against Verona on Friday. For whatever reason, I've been asked about Verona, I think 3 times this season if I ever wanted to, because I faded them a ton last season and they just continue to own me week after week. And I keep getting asked from people like, are you going to, go against Verona? I keep saying no, but I think this is the time to do it. Venezia had a really, really good result against Genoa 2 weeks ago. They've been playing a very, very difficult schedule to begin Serie A. And Verona, it's kind of just the same story as it was last year. They can't create really anything offensively. They're averaging under 1 non-penalty expected goal per 90 minutes. So I really don't think they should be this big of a home favorite here against a Venezia team that has shown capabilities and had the best underlying metrics in the second division last season. And finally, La Liga, Alaves, Barcelona, both teams to score at minus 140. We've been over with Barcelona on the Champions League podcast, but essentially under Hansi Flick, they are an incredible offensive team and they are almost impossible to stop offensively. But because they're so aggressive, because they push so many guys forward, they leave themselves very, very vulnerable in transition. Alaves is a very, very good mid-table side in La Liga. You saw them come back against Real Madrid. They scored 2 goals against them. And I landed on both teams to score as opposed to an Alaves +1 because the Barcelona offense just scares the living crap out of me. And it's going to scare the living crap out of me week after week after week. So fading them, even though they are on the road in a bad spot coming off the Champions League after beating Young Boys 5-0, I think both teams to score at minus 140 is a little short. Obviously, Ter Stegen is out for the season as well for Barcelona. So you have what's maybe Szczesny right now or, a backup in there. So I think there's a little bit of value on both teams to score in Alaves and Barcelona.
And that brings us to the championship, Sam, where once again we're focusing on the Argyle as they travel to Ewood Park.
Huge win against Luton.
Against Luton. Decent showing against Burnley in the midweek, and now we head up to Blackburn. What do you got?
Very good win against Luton. A really dodgy looking penalty against Burnley. I'm not really sure on that. Burnley won 1-0. And then we come into Plymouth versus Blackburn on the weekend. I'm going for over 2.75. Asian goes at minus 118. Argyle are starting to work themselves into some form at home park, which obviously I'm thrilled with. And it's a venue where they've been so impressive at for a number of seasons now. We've seen against Luton and Sunderland, 2 of the better teams in the division that they can create and score goals. Rami El Hadj started his first game against Luton in the 10 row, looking really tidy, more than happy in receiving the ball, linking play, meaning there wasn't an over-reliance on the wingers, which I mentioned a few weeks ago, and in turn, that really gave Luton a few headaches. He looks really bright, and we desperately needed that kind of figure in there. So with that attacking mindset at home, it also leaves Wayne Rooney's Green susceptible at the other end. Both teams will definitely have chances. There is no doubt about that. We're going to see plenty of attempts from either side, and we just need both to find the net. I'll quickly run through the shot totals of Argyle's games this season. Luton, 19-16. Sunderland, 13-17. Stoke, 15-15. Hull, 16-14. I could go on. All the numbers suggest there will be goals in this game. So obviously it will probably be 0-0 because I've gone pretty heavy on this. So Plymouth vs Blackburn over 2.75 goals, minus 118.
Love it. You were talking about how you rush to see the Everton scoreline every weekend, and me and BJ now are every time the championship plays, got to see how Wayne Rooney.
I was watching Plymouth Luton. That was a screamer to begin the match, man. That was amazing.
It's a good game.
An aesthetically really beautiful team too, with the kit and the badge, and just classic.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam. I believe Plymouth is the largest city to never have a team in the Premier League, or at least get to the top flight since like 1990. Is that correct?
That sounds both correct and depressing, yeah.
Yeah, because there's about 2 million people in Plymouth, somewhere around there?
No, it's not that big. There's maybe like 300,000, but I suspect most of the other big teams have been in the top flight. So
Sorry to depress you. I read that one time. And
ending the podcast on a high. Cheers, BJ.
Yes. But that will change. Maybe it's Wayne Rooney brings him up
potentially.
Okay, underdog parlay time. 3 picks. These ones are going to come out to a hefty price, 253-ish to 1 on this one. Sam, you can get us started.
Yeah, buzzing to get this in the underdog category at plus 550. I'm going for Gabriel, anytime scorer. Southampton's set piece numbers in the Premier League this season are the worst of all 20 top flight sides from an underlying numbers perspective. Southampton have allowed 3.82 XGA from set pieces alone in just 6 games. And if I know that, then you can be 1000% certain that Arsenal's set piece coaches do too. So they'll be looking for a way to exploit this suspect defence arriving at the Emirates. And who's set to profit from an Arsenal set piece? It is their lofty central defender, Gabriel, at plus 550 to score anytime. I think it's a pretty big price. We saw against Manchester City, Bukayo Saka will put a delivery on a sixpence, and it almost feels like there's some kind of magnetic pull towards Gabriel. He's always in the vicinity. He's always a threat, no matter what the opposition employs to try and stop him. So I'd also have a few pennies on first and last goal scorer at 18 to 1 too.
I love it. I'm going to go Crystal Palace. I was debating between Everton and Palace in this spot, but we're all going big, so I'm not going to miss out on that. Palace at plus 500 at home to Liverpool. The spot for Liverpool is really tricky. Ton of football in these legs. Now they travel to Selhurst Park on a really quick turnaround, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time kickoff. They're playing Wednesday afternoon in the Champions League against a Bologna team I think could cause them some issues or at least make it difficult. So this Palace team has more to it than I think meets the eye. So give me the 5 to 1 on Palace to get us to you, BJ.
Yep, plus 550 on Nottingham Forest against Chelsea. Chelsea's been really good their last 2 matches, but they've played 2 of the worst defensive teams. You know, they played West Ham, who is non-existent right now, and Brighton played an incredibly high line, which just fed right into what Chelsea does best. You know, Chelsea at their core is a better transition team than they are building out of the back. And Nottingham Forest, when they went to Chelsea last season, they won the match because they were able to sit in a very compact defensive structure and force Chelsea to try to beat them with crosses. And Chelsea just doesn't have aerial threats that can get on the end of those type of crosses. Nottingham Forest is allowing the lowest XG per shot of anybody in the Premier League right now. Morgan Gibbs-White is back after suspension. They have some good transition pieces. Chris Wood has been in really good form this season, over a 0.7 XG per 90-minute scoring rate. So I think the pieces are there, and I think Chelsea is a little bit overvalued here. So I like Nottingham Forest plus 550.
Like I said, 253 to 1 on that one. Feels good too. Feels like a banker, as they would say over in your neck of the woods. Sam, all right, best bets for match week 7 of the Premier League, taking us into another international break. BJ, you can go first.
Let's go Bournemouth, plus 110 on the road against Leicester. You know, everything that applied to what Bournemouth was going to do against Southampton kind of applies here against Leicester. And, you know, Leicester is still trying to maintain what they were in the championship last season, which is a team that is able to build out of the back, that is able to control matches. That's a death sentence here against Bournemouth, who is forcing opponents into turning the ball over in dangerous areas at the highest rate of anybody in the Premier League right now. Those will create easy transition opportunities. And the Leicester defense has actually have some pretty concerning results here. They just conceded well over 4 expected goals to Arsenal. And overall for the season, they are 17th in final third to box entry conversion rate allowed. That's really concerning because if you are defending in a low defensive block, you have to be able to keep teams out of your penalty area. They're also allowing a very high number of crosses. Bournemouth completed the 3rd most crosses of anybody in the Premier League. So really good spot here for Bournemouth. It looks like a buy high type of situation, but I think there's still some value here on the cherries. So I like them at plus 110.
I'm going to go with Aston Villa against Manchester United right now, plus 125. We'll see where this number goes after Villa plays Bayern. But stylistically, I have no concerns about this matchup for Villa. They've been a little leaky and suspect in defense, but I think that their attack should be able to overwhelm an even more suspect defense in Manchester United, which just hasn't got itself sorted once again this season. So I'll look to play Villa at home, plus 125 or better. Sam, what do you got?
Yeah, full disclosure, my best bet was actually going to be Bournemouth, but it was stolen from me. So I'm going for over 3.5 goals in Brighton versus Tottenham as my next best. It's a big line, but I just can't see how there's not goals galore in this game if Brighton continue with that high line, which they probably will. We have two sides here that will have a right good go. After Spurs' last away day in Manchester, where they racked up 4.59 XG in the backyard of fellow top four hopefuls, they'll bound into this one pretty confident of leaving their mark. And Tottenham now leads the way in expected goals in the Premier League, more than City, more than Liverpool. If they can keep their end of the bargain here, I am confident Brighton will be efficient enough in front of goal, in front of that Amex crowd down on the south coast. So Brighton v Spurs over 3.5, minus 101.
All right, that does it for this episode of Wondergoal. Thank you for listening. We will be back in a fortnight after the international break. But until then, best of luck with all your bets, and a tip of the cap to our producer Noah and David on the back end. We'll see you soon.